And welcome everybody to the Fandom Zone. And you are with General Zod. And today I have a very special guest with me. I am super excited for this week's Fandom Talks. So, anyways, how about you introduce yourself to all of the fine folks, the small group of folks who may not know who you are, which I'm gathering is a small group by now.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I don't know about that, but I am Ryan Kinel. We've got a little channel, Ryan Kinel RK Outpost. I talk mostly about the Star Wars expanded universe because that, to me, was what Star Wars really was. You know, I loved the movies growing up, but then I got introduced to the books, and my fandom just took off into this whole nother level of novels and comic books and video games and everything. So that's the Star Wars that I really love. And then, like so many other people, I was kind of disappointed by what we ended up getting from Disney. And so that's kind of where a very short story of how I kind of decided to start my channel. I wanted to talk about all this awesome Star Wars content that's still out there.
And it's interesting, the genesis of channels, as I like to call it. We all start from somewhere. There's something that gets ruined for us. Believe it or not, I am a Star Wars fan, but a other fandom that actually propelled me to my channel was the Harry Potter and the Crimes of Grindelwald, or Fantastic Trash, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
That really started it for me. Like, I remember the first video I shot, it was on my phone because I don't know if you know him, but Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers watched a lot of his videos. And he always stuck with me when he said, it doesn't matter what you have to say if you have the world's shittiest camera. He's like, you just get on there and you just start, record yourself and start saying what you got to say and get it out there. So that's what I did. And I maintain he stole the car video from me because I have a whole bunch of car videos that I shot before I started seeing his.
Should have trademarked it. Lost your chance.
I will give him one thing. I had no clap. I just shot in my car.
Well, and now, Jeremy's got that filter or whatever that just highlights the blue. Yep. And I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, that's so freaking lame, but I kind of like it, and I don't know why. But he's definitely got a good thing going with that car video, man.
Yeah, it does. I used to do reviews and stuff like that till YouTube changed the rules, as they do for us creators, moving the goalposts and whatnot. But yeah, that's cool because I've loved the EU side of things too. I do read books. I got an amigo of mine, PB, who will argue with you about the book, the source material in books. He's like, I gotta see it. I gotta see it on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the reasons I started my channel is because I hadn't heard too much expanded universe talk kind of in the Phantom Menace side of the equation. And I don't know if it's just because I'm more attuned to it or whatever, but over the past several weeks, I've heard more and more. It's been really awesome because this is the stuff that I love. And to find out that there's so many other people who, are in this community that also love it, and have kind of just been waiting for a chance to talk about it. It's been awesome because, like I said, I've said it a couple of times, when you watch a movie, you get 2 hours worth of experience out of it. When you read a book, I mean, you're looking 8, 10, 12 hours, however long it takes you to finish it and however big it is. But you can get so much deeper and more invested into a lot of the characters through reading. And I know reading is not for everybody, but for me, it was just, growing up reading, it was such a great way for me to get invested in something. And that's what ended up being with Star Wars.
And really quick before we go on, because I definitely want to dive into the book aspect for a little bit, I want to give a shout out to the chat. How you doing, Gary North? 2nd Street Marvel, what's up? Teresa Martin, and the person we were just talking about off air, Mary Mayhem, the one who helped me out when I first started. I always like to give her a shout out because she's a wonderful person. And anyone subscribed to me who hasn't checked her channel out, please go check her channel out. If you like her content, go subscribe to it or drop her a like and all that good promotional jazz.
I could not agree with that more. Mary, Mary's awesome. She's one of like the things that, helps hold this community together. She helps so many people. Is such a great person that, I definitely second that. Everybody make sure you're subscribed to Mary Mayhem.
Yeah, she's just great, and people don't realize how wonderful and how nice of a person she is. She was instrumental in helping me when I was getting going and trying to, find an audience. And, it really speaks to what the community is about and what we're about here. Because, there's a big misconception about Phantom Menace, Phantom Collective, whatever subgroup you're in. I consider it all that we just like our mediums and we don't like to see them tampered with. And, it's funny you bring up the EU because it used to be there was a split in Star Wars. And I was talking about this the other night, and there was just a slight division, and it was the EU side of things. And it happened around the prequels where people from the EU were salty about things that went down as far as the books to movie division, how they did the Clone Wars and things like that. And then, all of a sudden, Ruin Johnson comes, and I feel like he looked at everything and he goes, how can I F up this universe more? I know, I'll create the world's worst movie. And I feel like another reason why I wanted to have someone on the EU, we also have Lethal Lightning, he's a big EU fan, but a reason why I wanted to have someone else from the EU universe is because I think this is a time for EU fans and original trilogy fans to come together and to say, hey, Disney, this is crap. We need to, go back to how it was, and people don't like your stories. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot of that sentiment right now. You said something interesting about Star Wars fans, kind of being divided before, and I 100% agree with you. And I think that kind of speaks to geek culture, kind of in general. I think that the type of people that get into geek and nerd culture are people that are highly invested in like the lore and the specifics behind things. And, sometimes we seem to be very quick to be like, oh, you didn't know about this thing that happened in this random book that was published 20 years ago on the 32nd page in the 5th paragraph. Loser, like I'm a bigger fan than you. And so I do think so for me, what I saw in the Star Wars fandom was not necessarily about the prequels versus the EU, but when we started getting into the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni animated series.
Yeah, my hero. Some people from the EU will probably throw spears at me later, but I'm sorry. Anyone who can rock a cowboy hat like that, I'm just saying.
Well, he tries to rock it really hard. Whether he's successful or not, that's yet to be determined. But so, and that is where I do think that there was a little bit of a fracture, right? You see people like myself who have been reading the expanded universe and very invested in the continuity, for something that has over 140 books, thousands of comic books, hundreds of young adults books, and video games, for it to be as connected and the continuity be as good as it was is incredible. It's something that no other franchise has ever been able to do, what they did with the expanded universe. And then during the Clone Wars, although, I was talking about it today, actually, I enjoy watching the Clone Wars. I think it's an entertaining show. There were some things that they did in it that seemed like they just didn't care about continuity for like no reason. It'd be one thing if they changed something to like make it better or fix something, but it was little things that didn't make any sense, that really frustrated a lot of people in the community. And I don't want to make this into a Dave Filoni thing, but I do enjoy what he creates. But that is one of the things you said, kind of one of those splits. And then one of the things that made me, very interested after The Last Jedi, with all the people talking, is because it seemed like something that was very similar to what happened to me as an expanded universe fan years before. For those of you that don't know, in 2012, when Disney bought Star Wars, all of the books that had been going up till then, the books, the video games, everything was all part of the expanded universe. So something separate from the 6 movies, but that all added to the lore and connected it together. And in 2014, they said, we're going to say, forget about this. We don't want to be restricted by the stories that you've told us in the expanded universe. We want a fresh slate so we can make our own stories and not be beholden to this. And, there was a lot of outrage and reaction to that for people like me that had spent, hundreds and thousands of dollars and countless hours worth of time on this thing that we loved for so long, for it to kind of be thrown away like that and, discontinued without finishing out stories and things like that. It was kind of shocking to a lot of us. And
here's the thing, to highlight that for 1 second, because I wanted to touch on those points, is that I don't think movie fans realize exactly how EU fans got screwed over by this Disney thing too. I mean, we both, I find it funny because EU fans and Star Wars movie fans used to have debates, but I don't remember them being very vicious. I remember thinking, and no offense, but some of you guys were pompous asses, but it was never to a point where we would name call and, just be like unfriending each other and things like that. It was just like, they got their universe, and I'm glad things are going good over there, and we got our movies. And there was harmony, or to use Star Wars, there was a balance. But now you're at this weird point where we actually should be coming together with you guys, because we weren't the only ones who got screwed over. We got screwed over later than you. We didn't realize it, but you guys got hit before we got the hammer dropped on us with TLJ. If we're going by the timeline, right? 2014, when did The Last Jedi come out?
2017.
2017. So that was still in that Force Awakens era. And, us moviegoer fans, we were swindled or hoodwinked or whatever you want to call it, because we still had hope, man. Coming out of Force Awakens, we still had hope. Where you guys started seeing it, they're discontinuing the books. They're saying, oh yeah, we're not going to continue the continuity. You guys were already seeing what was coming, and we got hit late in the game.
Yeah, and that's one thing, because I kind of went through a mini version of this in 2014. Chuck Wendig, everybody knows the name now. I knew it several years ago because he was one of the first ones to come out with one of the new, Disney canon, new timeline books. And it was called Aftermath. And when it came out, it got a lot of 1-star reviews on Amazon. And what did we hear? We heard these are just these are online trolls. They just hate this book because there happened to be a gay person in the book, right? So we got called homophobes and racists or whatever because we didn't like the way this new canon's going. All the same stuff on a little smaller level than it was, at the height of TLJ. But all of that stuff was happening to people who are fans of the expanded universe and just didn't like this new book. And so when I then saw the aftermath of TLJ, it was like it's all happening over again. Because, like you said, I was already I am not someone who enjoyed Force Awakens at all, because maybe because I had in my mind what I thought it should be, and then I saw what they were doing, and I saw that these characters didn't have any actual balls behind them. It was all just this dressing. If you had dropped me in the middle of an alternate universe, and I'd never seen a Star Wars movie before or anything like that, I'd be like, yeah, and it's probably a decently made film. You know, it looks really good. The music is really good. I don't know why all these random people are cheering just because C-3PO appeared on screen, but I guess that means something, right?
Yep.
So much of it was nostalgia based, and there was so little actual meat on the bone, at least to me. So I didn't like Force Awakens from the beginning.
And that's the thing that's interesting about this whole thing was I to this day, and please people in the chat don't throw spears at me, but I to this day will defend Force Awakens. I liked it. I will personally like that because I'm also a fan of movies, and I do reviews here on my channel. And not to shamelessly plug, but if you're new to the channel and you like this conversation, hit that like button. And if you like me, hit the subscribe button. Okay. But you know, I just feel like you got to say it sometimes. But
yeah, I'm really bad about that. I just keep going. I don't say it at all in an entire stream.
But I'm like, you know, I look at movies from a film perspective. Now, if you're just going from someone who critiques movies, which I also do, and all sorts of movies, the story writing is solid. It's got beats. It's got a good flow to it, at least. Okay. And
I agree with that. Pacing is really good in it. Yeah.
Yeah, the pacing is decent. You know, it has that slow start, builds up. You have your beginning, your middle, your end, the rising action, the downward climate, the cliffhanger of all cliffhangers, right? No one, even if you don't know, which I don't know what universe we're in, if you don't know who Luke Skywalker is, no one can tell me that coming out of that movie and seeing Luke Skywalker standing at the end, you know, facing Rey, everyone wasn't excited. I was excited, you know, they were cheering in my theater. I was cheering, you know, I had that strong sense. And I was like, okay, some of this stuff was kind of, you know, some of the stuff with Han Solo, whatever, but I could forgive it because I see what they're doing. They got a decent, you know, setup. Let me see where this is going. And then Ruin Johnson comes along and says, well, you know what? All those story threads you were following, yeah, we don't need them. You know? And I think from a movie perspective, if you take both movies, it's uneven. And it's the problem that this new movie has, is that it's uneven writing. And even if you are writing a book or you're writing a movie, if you're writing a long-running series, there has to be consistency. There has to be consistent story flow and threads. I mean, take Finn, for instance. He started off with a very intriguing setup in Force Awakens, and they did nothing with that. I mean,
well, I don't agree they did nothing. They just literally did the same exact story. That's what they did in TLJ.
Well, yeah, they didn't progress the character, but he kind of became this goofy, like, comic relief. And when you think of how his arc started, they could have gone in a very touching, emotional place, but they didn't. They just they're like, oh yeah, you're gonna go to this planet and do absolutely nothing for a good hour of the movie.
It's funny because you say that, right? Because we see in Force Awakens, right, Finn is this dude who's very uncomfortable and doesn't want to be a part of this and decides to get away and run away, right? And he's just running away the whole movie until he finds something that he cares about, right, that's worth sticking around for. And he ends up doing just that in the end, and standing up for Rey and taking a lightsaber for it. And then in this beginning of Last Jedi, we see him in the exact same place. He's a dude who's uncomfortable where he's at. He's trying to run away and trying to get away the entire time until he finds something worth staying for and worth fighting for. So it's literally just the same arc twice in a row.
And I mean, I've read some of one of my favorite books is Shadows of the Empire. And me and Stig were talking about it last night, kind of off air. And, I have not read, I don't even want to touch any of those new EU books. But, I think it's funny, Ryan, that they had the book of The Last Jedi, where they say in the book we're going to fill in parts that weren't in the movie, and it's like, well, why are you filling in parts in the book that should have been in the movie? The movie, for crying out loud, was 2 hours and some change. You're telling me you couldn't get everything that may have been relevant into your movie?
Yeah. Well, and so what I will say is that for a lot of the movies, the novelizations do really expound upon it and make it better, but it's never necessary, right? It's never necessary. So, for instance, the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover is absolutely phenomenal. It adds so much to what I think is already a great movie. You know, for Revenge of the Sith, the acting's not necessarily on point all the time, especially with Natalie Portman and what's his name? And Hayden Christensen. Yeah. So, but the story is great. I love Revenge of the Sith. Seeing that culmination with him and Obi-Wan is amazing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the novelization adds so much depth to where Anakin's mindset is and everything like that. So I do understand that novelizations are great to provide more context, but it shouldn't be necessary for you to enjoy or even understand what the hell is going on in a movie for you to read a book.
Yeah, and that's the point. And I've gotten this from, like, because I'm more of a fan rooted in the DC universe and that kind of side of things. So I get the whole debate because I often find myself going, well, if you read the comic, you get a good insight. And then, like, now I do understand, like, no, it's two different mediums. When you're telling a story, the basis of writing, the basic structure of writing is beginning, middle, and end. And it doesn't matter if you're writing a book or if you're writing a screenplay, you need a beginning, middle, and end. And it doesn't matter if it's a trilogy, you can have a cliffhanger, but you need the story to have a beginning, middle, and end. I mean, you've got to give the audience something and then give them a little something more if you're building upon that to come back to. But that doesn't mean you make a crappy story and, just use a name and be like, oh, yeah, they're going to come back. It's Star Wars. You want to see Star Wars? They're going to come back to Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's one of the things I've been thinking about, because I've been talking a little DCEU with people lately, and as obviously Star Wars. But one of the things that you have, whether it be Marvel or DC or whatever, we've seen so many iterations of these characters over the years. And so it's very easy to be like, well, this is this person's interpretation of a character. Whether you accept or like that interpretation or whatever, that's fine. But it's, that's something that's kind of normalized, right? Is that you have different iterations. Star Wars, there are no interpretations, right? You have the 6 movies from Lucas, and then to have something else, like TLJ, it can't just be like, well, this is my take on Star Wars. That's not how it works. That's not what episode 8 in a 9-part series should be, right? That is something, a standalone movie could be kind of your take if you wanted to go there. But, in a universe that's this big, that spans so long, why does that have to be at episode 8?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, the problem is, and I'm sure you've heard this from talking, I like to call it around the water cooler. They're throwing all this stuff out, and it's like, I'm also probably going to say something else that'll get me crucified. I know somewhere in the world Mrs. Ears will burn when I say this, but I don't have a problem with J.J. Abrams. I never have. The only thing of his I never really liked that he did was Lost, and that'll be an hour rant if I go into that. But I don't see how people lay so much blame on one director, or how one director is expected to fix someone else's screw up. I mean, let's be real, okay? I say JJ has blame because he walked away from something, as he does. He starts something and doesn't finish it. He's notorious for this. Anything you've watched, the man can start something like a pro, but finishing it, that's where it gets a little sketchy. And now, so you have,
Yes.
yeah, you have someone who sets something up, right? You have two people, actually. You have Lucas and you have JJ. And even JJ says, okay, I may not have used all of Lucas's ideas, but here you go. I have an outline going here. All you got to do is follow the outline. And what does he do? Ryan Johnson reminds me of one of those pompous, upstart directors where he's like, you know what? I'm Ryan Johnson. I'm Ryan Johnson, and I've done Brick, and I can make these witty, independent films with, and I'm an imaginary, just great director. So screw George, screw JJ. I'm gonna make my own Star Wars. I'm gonna subvert expectations. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, like you said, so JJ, I think that JJ is a really good director, right? I think that he produces really really interesting things both to look at, and they have good pacing and things like that. But my issue with him is when he's writing something. Like you said, he has great ways to start things. He leaves these breadcrumbs, but the problem is the breadcrumbs just run into like a fucking dead end instead of wherever you're supposed to go, right? That's what it always seems like. So I would have been 100% on board with JJ, being the director. But my question, the Lucasfilms, if these guys are just doing whatever they want with these movies, which is apparent, I don't really know what to believe, if that's true or not. But what is the story group for? What is the Lucasfilm story group for? Why do these people exist if they're not the ones that are creating the story? It doesn't make any sense to me to have these directors come in and do their stories when you have a team of people specifically for that.
Yeah, and here's the thing that people forget. Directors direct, right? It's like the whole thing. Typically, when I've seen movies, you could have a brilliant director and have a separate writer who writes the story. And both of them have intricate, important roles, okay? Because the director is directing the actors. He's directing how the story is going to come to light. His role isn't not important, but the writer writes the beginning, middle, and end. Each have their importance, each have their place. And it seems to me like Disney is just letting people throw shit against the wall and, seeing what sticks, so to speak. And it's like a hodgepodge of people just running around. I don't even know who's writing. Did Ryan Johnson write TLJ? Because it felt like he wrote, he directed, he produced. I don't see any shades of anyone who was a competent writer writing for that movie. Or
I believe he wrote it. I believe he wrote and directed it. I don't know the producing stuff.
Because that's what it feels like. It feels like someone whose job is specifically to direct wrote the film. And, not every director can write. And they know that. That's why they get a writer.
Yeah. And that's, it's unfortunate that, and kind of like you said, it's tough to blame J.J. Abrams, but that's not to say he's blameless either.
Exactly.
He could have. I feel like he had the power. Like, they wanted him, right? They wanted him really badly to direct this movie, or to direct a series of movies, and he ended up just doing the one. I feel like he could have put his foot down at some point and said, "This is the story, right?" Or I'm walking. But he didn't do that. Got turned over to Ryan Johnson. Now he's trying to tell us all that, Ryan didn't change anything. This is always part of the plan. Come on. There's no way that's true. There's no way that's true. But I don't know. Are you excited to see episode 9?
I gotta say, I am excited to be a YouTuber and get people to view the review. And that's a sad thing. I'm excited for the conversations that I'll have. Am I excited for the movie? Unless the miracle of all miracles happen, baby Jesus comes to modern world, Christmas Day miracles, all that stuff, and this movie winds up turning out being the most spectacular thing we've ever seen. No, man, I'm not excited. I want it to turn out well as a fan of the films, but am I optimistic about its chances? No, not at all. And Darth Bane, really quick, just to answer you, buddy. I agree that JJ should have stayed with Star Trek on one hand. On the other hand, I was excited he was doing Star Wars because of what he did with Star Trek. Once again, that's highly controversial because Star Trek fans would be like, "Oh my God, I hate JJ's version," but I liked it. So
Yeah, so I'm not nearly as big a Star Trek guy as I am Star Wars. You can't even really put it in the same atmosphere, right? But I did like a lot of the Star Trek like motion pictures. When I saw what J.J. Abrams did with that, I feel like it'd be a little bit tougher or a little bit easier pill to swallow as a Star Trek diehard fan, because they made it like within the first 5 minutes of the film, it was clear that all of a sudden we're in an alternate timeline. You know what I mean? Like completely, you're in a completely alternate timeline now. So I think that gives you a little bit of more free reign. And so then, I was able to appreciate kind of what he did. And, I love Wrath of Khan. And so for, what was that, Into Darkness? Is that the second one?
Yes.
Yeah. So for Into Darkness, that I'm thinking like this that is what it is, right? This is this movie. How are they going to do this in this alternate universe? And to see at the end, because what I was waiting for the entire time was that scene in the reactor. Just like, in the original Wrath of Khan, Spock, does this mind meld with Bones and walks into the reactor and sacrifices his life to save everyone. And him and Kirk have this moment, on either side of the reactor where Spock's dying, and he's like, "Spock, why?" And he said, "Because the good of the many outweighs the good of the one." And so to see that like reversed in Into Darkness, it was so cool. And like I said, I'm not a big Star Trek guy, so I get if you hate it. I get that totally. So I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then the way they brought him back to life, I was just like, "Oh, well, okay. Why can't anyone just be brought back to life at any fucking point in time? You just ruined it for me."
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing. That's the thing, though. See, with Star Trek, you can do, because it's been established in the lore, alternate timelines, different realities, things like that. He had a reality to play around with. Now you come to the Star Wars side of things, and there's very there is room, but it's a very, very loose lane, so to speak. And I felt like in Force Awakens, even though people say it's copy and paste, blah, 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 he was trying to stay in the lane. You know what I mean? He was trying to go out a little bit, give us some new things in his own way, but he was also trying to stay in that lane, because I think he understood, like, hey, this is very niche. I don't have as much wiggle room here. And I felt like in the movie, you could feel that kind of, him not really wanting to step out one way or the other, trying to keep things, in a designated route. And when you see that ending with Luke, I felt like he had a plan. I felt like he really did have a plan. Now, whether this new movie, everything that's in it, is going to be part of that plan is up for debate, or whether it's just him trying to scrap and save whatever mess it's become now, that's up for debate. But, I think originally he had a plan.
yeah. Well, and that's, so to me, one of the things that was just like basically unforgivable was what they did to Han Solo in Force Awakens. People talk about Luke and Last Jedi, and yeah, I'm all about that. I agree. That was awful. But what they did to Han Solo in Force Awakens, I don't understand how people so easily overlooked that. You have one of the most beloved characters in fictional history in Han Solo, who goes on this great arc, right? As a dude, a down on his luck smuggler who doesn't give a rat's ass about anyone but himself and Chewbacca and money, and how to get more of it in Episode 4. And you see him, he makes a decision to come back and save Luke at the end of that movie, and that's a big step for him. But he's still not ready, right? In Empire, he still needs stuff on his own to take care of. You see him have this whole arc where he decides he wants to be a part of this. He wants to be more than what he had in his life, and he wants to be part of this family, for lack of a better term. And that's a great character arc. So then it's immediately established in Force Awakens that he's completely reverted. He has abandoned his family, whether for good reasons or not. He's abandoned his family, is a deadbeat dad, and he's back doing the same stuff with Chewbacca, back in the same trouble that he was so many years ago. So why did he go through that arc? Like, if he just end up the same person? That to me, it was unforgivable to someone who had seen the character that we had in the expanded universe, who becomes a family man and a respected dude, even though he hates being respectable. That's what he is.
And it's interesting because that's that EU knowledge, right? Coming from what I know from the films, I do understand the kind of regression of the character. Once again, story-wise, which I definitely understand that. My thing was, I was never a big Han Solo fan. I'm more like Lando. So I was always on board with Lando between the two of them, just because, Billy D. Williams, man. And so what happened to him in Solo pissed me off. I still haven't watched that movie, but just heard the reviews and seen people talking about the pansexual and all that garbage. But
I do think that was a little blown out of proportion. Like, they definitely make reference to it in the movie, but if there hadn't been this big hubbub about everything before that, it could have easily been laughed off as a joke, I think.
Yeah, and I think that they didn't realize the windfall from TLJ until that movie came out.
Hey, so Shellback is saying to me in the chat, he's asking why they did that. He says, because I'm talking about Han Solo. He says, because Harrison wanted him to die. So you can have a character die without assassinating their character, right? And who they are. you can have it. You can have a character die, and it doesn't have to be like that.
And
you can have him actually be like himself.
I agree. They could have set up, like, maybe he was a loving and caring father, and if they want to do this Genesis with Kylo, they could have done the inverse and been like, yeah, he had two good parents in Leia and Solo, but he just went off, as kids do, in his own twisted direction. Because then you could have had a good story of the kids wanting to supersede their parents, right? There's a lot of deep meaning that you could have thrown into that. So I do understand where you're coming from with the character assassination. Me personally, it didn't hit me as much just because I've never been a really huge Han Solo fan. I like Harrison Ford, but I also know the stuff behind the scenes. And, my feelings were, it's good to have people who want to be doing what they're doing. And if he only wants to be there for one movie, I understand them being like, all right, well, we're going to kill off his character because, he doesn't want to go on with it any further. Kind of forcing someone to act something they don't want to, that shows in the way they portray the character, So
yeah.
I'd rather that his heart would be in, even if it's just one movie, and being like, I'm going to do the best iteration of this character because it's my send off. And, I don't want, I want to at least look kind of cool doing this one last time. I understand that perspective. I also understand from being a fan too, what you're saying, Ryan, which is yeah, you can do that, but you don't have to assassinate the character and who they are and who they've been established as in the story. And that's the big thing with Disney, right? Whether it's EU or whether it's the movies, it's keeping things that are within the story, still within the story. They, they go and they say this, and this doesn't count, but it's kind of funny. It doesn't count until they need to market it to make it count and bring fans back because they piss them off and they don't want to see their stuff anymore.
Yeah, exactly. They talk about, letting the past die, kill it if you have to. That's more than just a simple metaphor in a movie, right? But then what did they do, right, to market it to us and give us all this nostalgia and stuff like that because they need our money. In the trailer they put 30, 45 seconds of original trilogy and prequel trilogy stuff, stuff that people have a real care for. You look at the crap hole that Galaxy Edge is, right? That no one cares what's happening there because it's all sequel trilogy stuff, and there's more to it than that, right? The fact that it's essentially empty and it's just a place to buy stuff. There's nothing to actually entertain you there. That has a part of it as well, but the fact that they made such an effort to make it just sequel trilogy is so strange and so disconnected.
Well, we talked about this on my channel when we were doing the great shilling. I was talking about the shills for Star Wars, and a $210 lightsaber, and I played the videos and we took a look at them, and they just look like high-end stuff you can buy at a regular store. So you're saying, I'm going to fly to Disneyland or Disney World, and I'm going to pay an exorbitant amount of money because you figure I got to get my plane ticket, I got to book my hotel, I got to pay for a rental car so that I can drive around, maybe take in the sights. And then I'm going to go to this place and pay an absurd amount of money for all of this stuff because, if you have kids, parents know they're going to want this, they're going to want this shirt, they're going to want that, the little build a robot thing and all that nonsense. So you're saying I'm looking at dropping almost when I estimated it, you're looking at to have a basic time maybe $400 or $500 at the very least. And that's if you're being conservative with your budget. God knows if you're trying to really splurge, right? So you're paying more to experience the park than you are to actually, than you are to fly over there to get your plane ticket, your car, whatever, your hotel. You're damn near paying more for a day there to experience all of the stuff they got going on in Galaxy's Edge than you are to actually fly over there if you live somewhere else. It's ridiculous.
Speaking of Galaxy's Edge, we have a Galaxy's Edge connoisseur in the chat right now.
Yes, Mr. Drunk 3PO. I was reading the chat. I've been answering the chat. Welcome, Drunk. Good to have you here, buddy. Yeah, I've seen Drunk doing a couple of different things. He's also been with a good friend of ours here in the Fandom Zone, LB. They've been there to the park, so
I've been trying to get Drunk 3PO's attention to have him on a stream with me since he's always complaining about never being on my channel, but he just won't respond. So I guess maybe he doesn't really want to be on my channel. He's just gotten too big for me now.
And look at this. I want to highlight actually Drunk's said because he brings up a good point here. 2 weeks in China, all meals included, hotel, flight, $1,800, right? And then
is that just to go to China randomly?
Yep, that's probably is. Now you take that price tag, right, and 500 of that would be just to get a lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, he was talking about how ridiculously expensive it is. So
And
Yeah, I agree. Drunk, check your DMs. I know you're off Twitter, but check your DMs or your Facebook.
Yeah, man, talking about villains never really the chat. And just so you guys know, I appreciate the my people who have been on here. They know General Zod is a villain, and I sometimes don't check the chats. But
you're trying to make that chat kneel, right? That's all you're doing.
Yes, I've been trying to. It's funny, since I've done the kneel before Zod thing, I'll see a lot of people go, no.
I mean, you have, if you're gonna be General Zod, you can't just abandon the kneel, right? I mean, that has to be a big part of your persona if that's who you're gonna be.
You know, I'm keeping continuity.
How did you feel about Man of Steel?
Okay, I love Man of Steel, but now there's always that running joke when I come on as Zod. They're like, "Oh, you get your neck broken." I'm like, hold on a second. You know, Superman never broke Zod's neck in the original. I mean, granted, he the first time he exiled him into the Fandom Zone, and then the next time he kicked him down a big ice cavern thing. But it's not confirmed he's dead. He could have survived that fall. So this one, there was no doubt, like he broke his neck. It was like, oh, come on, Zach, that's dark, man. That's really dark.
It is dark. I loved it. Oh, I loved it.
I did. I love Man of Steel, but that DC debate would take hours, because I love Man of Steel. I like parts of Batman versus Superman. I hated Justice League.
That's because it's a completely different movie than it should be.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you take two different directors. Speaking of bringing it back into the Star Wars, when you take two different directors and you know, have them on one film.
Yeah. It sounds like that Lord and Miller cut is like completely a different movie. I mean, they had to reshoot almost all of it. So I don't know. I can't believe Solo made as little money as it did. I was so stunned, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's sad.
It was the villain in me was sad. You want to talk about sad days? There were people who died or people who cried when Han Solo died, right? Or they were very visibly upset. Imagine how a villain sees or feels when they see their selves being their neck being broken. Man, it's a tough thing.
I freaking love I love Man of Steel and I love BVS. I think that one thing we've never seen on screen is a man or a Superman origin story, right? We've seen Superman after he is Superman, right? But what this was all intended to be, what Zack Snyder's vision was this. Originally, it was 5-part. You know, it would have been essentially like a 3-part Justice League saga that he had to cut down to 2, and then they decided to cut down into 1, with Joss Whedon filming almost all of it. But it was intended to be this, you know, obviously the origin, the death of Superman, him coming back and him finding his place, and then being that Superman that everyone knows and loves, the optimistic, the smiling one. Like that, we were going to see how he got there. No one ever gave it a chance. I freaking love Man of Steel and BVS.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because DC gets a lot hated and Marvel walks on water. I've had this I've had this debate with many people, but you know, it's like there's problems in Marvel, and brace yourself, you're going to see them in these later films. You're already seeing the cracks starting to come through with everything that's been going on with Marvel, Sony, and all that jazz. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops.
The thing is with Marvel, right? They had a plan and they stuck with it, right? They stuck with it. They altered it a little bit. They started getting safe, you know, near the end, with basically every movie kind of feeling similar. Yep. With every character seemingly, you know, grew up an outcast, so they had to develop this witty sense of humor to fit into society. You know, every character's got a wisecrack, but they did that, right? And they did their thing. DC's problem is Warner Brothers. That's their problem, is they could not just let something go. They're constantly trying to alter their plans in the middle of it and tweak it with these, like, just because a couple people in a focus group say something. And they tried to get it like Marvel instead of giving people something else to watch. You can clearly see with Justice League, it was fully Joss Whedon trying to be Marvel, and it was bad. It was not a good movie. If you've seen things before, it doesn't connect in any sensible way. It doesn't feel the same, and the people spoke with their wallets. So all they had to do is just embrace that difference. You might not have the critics on your side, but the movies were still making money. They should have just gone with it, and instead now we're in this flux. Wonder Woman, Aquaman made a crap ton of money. Shazam made nothing. But now we're in this weird flux in the DCEU where I don't understand quite what they're doing. Is it full reboot mode? Like, what's going on? And I don't think they do either.
Yeah, I think they're just going with what is hitting and hoping for the best. See, I got a pre-screening of Joker, and I did a review on it. Yeah, and I'm here to tell you that is going to, because of how good that movie is, it is going to be very interesting to see if the box office is what I predict it's going to be for this film. I'm very interested to see if that spurs DC to be like, hey, it's okay to make an R-rated movie, and we have a base for it, and then maybe bring some darker characters, and then we can tell some darker stories and have something different. Because I think Joker's going to speak to a crowd that's been waiting for the really dark stuff from DC, because DC is different from Marvel. It always has been, because their characters are darker. MCU can pull off the lighthearted, bubbly. Most of their stuff is lighthearted. I mean, they got some dark stories in there, some weighted stuff, but they've mostly dealt on the fun fare, where DC in the comic books went the dark route, right? Batman, he's dark. Wonder Woman, Justice League, Cyborg's origins. I mean, there's tons of stuff in the DC universe that's very dark, gritty stuff. And I think that an R-rated film and doing R-rated films are going to be really creating a new market. I mean, you got John Constantine, you got Swamp Thing. There's a lot of really gritty, dark stories they can tell within the universe.
Yeah, I agree. Darth Bane asked you a question. Who would you rather fight, Superman or Doomsday? It's a question for General Zod.
Oh, God. Well, I suppose I should answer as General Zod. I would rather face that Boy Scout Superman, because he at least has a conscience to which I can play off of, where Doomsday doesn't care and was built specifically to kill Kryptonians. And Zod does not approve of that. Zod must rather fight a Boy Scout and trick him, maybe hold a bus full of civilians and force him to do one of his Superman maneuvers and think about the people. Whereas Doomsday wouldn't care and just rampage through the city. That's much harder to deal with. So I'd much rather go with Superman.
Unless it's Zack Snyder's Superman, then you're screwed, buddy.
Oh yeah. Nah, that dark Superman. That was not where it was at.
Yeah, I think that was this is the first time that Superman has been Superman, right? Like, this is the first time he's ever had to fight anyone, ever. Ever. This is the first time that he's testing his powers beyond pushing a bus out of a river or crunching a fence post because he's angry, right? He's held back all his life. He doesn't know anything about fighting. He doesn't know anything about it. I guess that's not true. He hold that entire oil rig up, right? So he did definitely test his strength there. But as far as fighting someone, this is the first thing he has to do is go up against this Kryptonian battle master. Of course, it's going to be bloody and there's going to be wreckage. And Zod, he tried to do everything he could. He did everything he could to not kill Zod. He's sitting there screaming at him, please don't let me do this. This is the last person who's like him in the freaking universe, as far as he knows. And he doesn't want to kill him.
And their ideologies is what separated them. Because when you think about, not just saying just because this is the persona, but when you think about General Zod's origin stories, and I always say this, and they're like, well, he did kill a whole planet. But to be fair, Zod did warn them all that Krypton was going to be taken by its hubris. Nobody listened. So he said, oh, yeah? Well, I'll make you listen. And that's how the rebellion in Kandorian with the Kandorians happened. And, he kind of predicted what Brainiac would do and destroy the planet. And so when you think about it, if they would have listened to General Zod and, what he was trying to tell them, maybe Krypton would still be around. But no one highlights that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was about protecting his race too. That's what, even in Man of Steel, that was his goal, was to bring the Kryptonian race back, because it had been, it's just nearly extinct. It was him, his followers, and Superman, or Clark Kent. And, just when you think about that, and you think about the fact that of being the last of your kind, that would probably force anyone to take drastic measures because you are preserving your people.
It's a righteous mission, and I feel like it's very clearly seen that he's not a madman, right? This is right to him, 100%.
It's almost, if you want to kind of make a comparison to Marvel, it's almost like what Thanos' justification is for doing what he does, right? Is that in order to bring that balance to the universe, you've got to get rid of some of it, and this prevents overpopulation, things like that. I mean, from a scientific standpoint, it makes sense. From a humanity standpoint, it's horrendous.
Well, it depends, right? If that was the only way to save the galaxy, right? If eventually everyone was going to die off, then is it bad for humanity? That's the cool thing about what they set up there, is that you can understand the arguments, even if you don't agree with it.
And this is what swings us back around to Star Wars. When you look at Marvel, when you look at DC, we could still talk about cool stuff going on in there, different storylines and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, all of their storylines and things like that, well, some of the DCU stuff might not always be a coherent line, but there's stuff you can pick and choose from, right? There's stuff where they can still kind of save everything. Whereas with Star Wars, they're going, they've messed everything up irreparably, and they're trying to scramble to have stuff make sense. And it's kind of ironic because they said, oh, we want to create this whole new universe and our thing different. We don't want to be beholden by, the old stuff. And now they need the old stuff to save this new garbage that they've created.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so funny that the fact they're bringing Palpatine back it's just so telling, right? That's what they need, right? Because they need someone that people cares about because they're unable to manufacture it on their own. And so, I asked you earlier, I guess I never even answered my own question, but I asked you if you were excited for Rise of Skywalker. I can say pretty honestly that I'm not. I've been out on this sequel trilogy for a long time. I do. What I'm excited for is to see if there's nothing they can do in this movie to change my mind as far as I'm concerned because of how out I was in the beginning. But if they can just do some things to show that they've been listening to the fans, I think that's like such a huge step. so even though I don't think there's any way that they can really pull this one out in the long end, if they show that they try, right, and if their behavior changes towards the fans, then I think that's such a huge step and a positive thing. So that's really what I'm looking towards episode 9 wise.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I don't want it to intentionally fail, I guess. So I guess to answer your question, I will go and see it with hope that it could be good, because at the end of the day, any person who's a fan of anything, if you're a fan of something, you're not going around saying, well, I hope this fails miserably. There's a small part of you, no matter how much you've been burned, there's a small part of you, especially in 3 movies, where you say, okay, the beginning for me was all right. Some people might be like, I was done at Force Awakens, and I respect that. But for me, it was all right. The middle is atrocious. And I'm like, okay, what do you got for me at the ending? Because at the end of the day, each movie is their own separate thing, even though it's a connecting trilogy. So at the end of the day, I really want them to be like, you know what? We heard what you guys were saying. We heard what you guys have been talking about, and we're listening, and this is what we're trying. We're trying to give you something that is comparable to what you're used to. And then afterwards, if they want to go and do all these things, good luck to you, because I'd really like to see how these movies are going to go. I mean, this news with getting Kevin over there and D&D, good luck with that, because if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you can see what you're in for those movies. Have fun with that. Watch season 8 and you'll see what D&D are capable of.
Season 7 too. Season 7 wasn't any good either. Everyone was in denial. Everyone was in denial of season 7 because they thought that we were going to get something great in season 8. But I totally agree.
You have a fan with Shellback. He says, hey, Ryan, here's the headline. EU content saves Star Wars.
Well, the thing is, I at this point don't want, now that they've thrown it away, I don't want them to like try to bring EU stuff into it and like mix it in. Like with Thrawn and Rebels, right? I was talking to Shellback a little earlier about TCW and Rebels. I don't necessarily want to get into that debate again, but when you do things like try to throw the EU fans a bone with bringing a character in, but it's not that character, they don't have their backstory. It's not the same person. It just has their name. That means nothing to me. We had rumors floating around about Mara Jade potentially coming, and to be fair, we've had those rumors every year, all the time, right? It's Force Awakens. Ooh, they're looking to cast a female. Could it be Mara Jade? Last Jedi. Ooh, we heard the rumors that it might be Mara Jade. Like, that happens all the time because they're trying to get people into a frenzy about it. But if you brought someone, or if you bring a character like that in, they don't mean anything. It's just a name. It's not their story. So I hope that they don't do that. I would love to see the expanded universe stories under the Legends banner continued in an alternate timeline, not necessarily movies and stuff. I don't think that's realistic, but just keep making books. I think there's a lot of people that are invested and interested in that. And, at the time comes, it's popular enough, make an animated series, something like that. Fans aren't stupid, right? People aren't going to be confused over different timelines. I mean, DC animated universe does awesome stuff. No one's confused by that. Like
DC, I'd say, because there's always this, speaking of split, there's always this split between people who watch animated stuff and people who don't. And I always say, you want to see some true adaptations from the DC universe of great work that Marvel can't touch, and that's the animated side. Like DC's stuff, Killing Joke, The Dark Knight Returns,
Under the Red Hood.
Under the Red Hood, Mask of the Phantasm, Justice League, Dark. I mean, there's tons of them. The Death of Superman, The Return of Superman. They've done so many good animated films where you go to the movies and you're like, oh, this is a mess. And here's the thing with Star Wars. I think at this point in the game, putting in one of your guys' EU characters would be, I know it would piss off probably the EU fans, and for people, because you got to remember too, not everyone who goes to see Star Wars movies is per se a hardcore Star Wars fan, especially these days. The box office is dominated now by regular normies, normal moviegoers, as Odin calls them. And it's true, because I work at the theater too, and you see the normal moviegoer, and it's okay. What can we get the normal, average moviegoer to be interested to gravitate towards? So if they introduce someone from the EU, the normal moviegoer who has no clue about Star Wars lore, or maybe has a vague clue about certain characters, is going to look at it and go, well, who the hell is this, right? And if you don't give them a backstory, they're really going to be scratching their head like, all right, that was cool. I don't have any clue what they have to do with anything, right? So, I mean, putting in like a Mara Jade or something like that would be a little weird, because unless you're from the EU or you have some knowledge of the lore, you're not going to know who the hell that is.
Yeah, but I just saw it's funny. I just saw on Twitter a couple minutes ago, somebody posted this thing in a comic book in a Galaxy's Edge. I guess I don't know if I think it's a Galaxy's Edge comic book. There's some writing on a bathroom stall. No, hold on. This is at Galaxy's Edge. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge has confirmed that Mara Jade is part of canon and alive. The user shared an image of writing in a bathroom stall at the park, which entered into the Galaxy's Edge translation portion of the park's app, says Mara Jade lives. What the hell?
Well, I
need to look more into that.
That is intriguing. And, with all these new people that they're getting to hopefully try to revitalize the franchise, right? It doesn't surprise me that they're trying to throw out different things to keep the interest there, because here's the problem that everyone's been saying, and it's going to be pretty glaring, is that once you finish the Skywalker trilogy, and I'm doing air quotes, then it's going to be, okay, where are you going to go from here? Because you haven't established anyone new that anyone cares about, and you've pretty much put them in the background and put the legacy characters that you want to forget about in the front to sell your movie, without developing these characters you already have. So no one cares about Finn. No one cares about Poe Dameron. No one cares about any of these other characters, right? So who are you marketing after this set trilogy? Who are you putting in your next movie? What is your next movie going to be about? I'll tell you what it's going to be about. You're going to go back. You're going to go back because you don't have anything. You didn't establish good roots. So you have nothing that people are going to care about after this trilogy ends.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that makes sense for them to do is to go back to the Old Republic and try to leech off that. Another thing that people have a lot of love for. I don't want them to. I think that's what's going to happen. I would love for someone to do a great. I think that. I think that if Dan and Dave were using stories from the expanded universe, that they could create a pretty good show or a pretty good movie, right? Based off that. Not if they have to write it themselves, then we'll be screwed. We've seen how that works when they run out of source content. But that is honestly what I think is going to happen. They're going to pull us back. They're going to feed us little tidbits about Revan, right, to get us excited about this or that. That's what I see going forward. Like you said, going back to another time where people are invested in something.
Yeah, I think that now you all you guys in the AEU are going to start seeing that they're going to be pulling from that material. But here's the thing. There's even a split within Disney itself to where they're like, oh, one group is like, oh, we don't want to go back to the old stuff. And one group's like, the Force is female.
Yeah.
So, I mean, It's like, and that stupid thinking is what got them where we are today. That's why we're at where we're at today, folks. It's because of the division. And really, because Kathleen Kennedy is stupid and doesn't know how to run a company. And, you know, she's not managing any of these people. You know, what up, Mega Jetty? Good to see you here. I mean, it's really hilarious to me that you can have one person who has so many people off doing stuff, and I can guarantee you she has no clue what anyone's doing. Not a fucking clue as to what anyone is doing anywhere. And it's sad. And it's why you have the state that you have. See, whether you like or dislike the new stuff coming out of Marvel, Kevin is different from Kathleen because Kevin knew the vision, right? And he let the directors be the directors. He let the writers be the writers, let them write what they wanted to. But at the same time, when he had to step in, he said, okay, this has to connect to this. So I like what you're doing, but I need you to make it work within this universe I'm building. And then he let the writers write. But I can guarantee you nothing got through without his approval, without him looking at it and going, yeah, okay, this fits here. We'll make this work. You know what I mean? Even his placement of where heroes were at, he placed them in such a way that it flowed. You can watch one movie to the other, and find a thread in every single one that would lead you, like you said, breadcrumbs to the next film, right? And then you got a whole new story. And that's what Star Wars should have been doing. But you don't got that. You got Joe Schmo who wants to write over here. And, you know, you got Jill, empowered female, who wants to write over here. And then you have Mr. Director guy who's directing, and no one's talking to anyone. You know?
It's weird, right? It's weird that two studios essentially is what we're talking about, you know, under the same Disney banner had two like completely different approaches, right? And that they weren't a little more hands-on with what was going on. And I think that all this Kevin Feige news, apparently it's been in the works for a while, people say. All this Kevin Feige news, I think that a lot of us would be a little more excited if this had happened like 2 years ago, right? At the height of MCU hype and, you know, leading up to Infinity War and everything. But with what we've seen from Feige and what he's stated that he wants the future of the MCU to be about, I think that a lot of us are now kind of rolling our eyes at this announcement. Unfortunately.
And, you know, I do agree with what Tommy here in the chat says. He said, KK knows what's going on, Zod. She's pushing what she wants to see. Don't be fooled, which I agree with that statement, too. I do agree that there is a hand that she plays in the direction that some of this has gone into. I mean, before JJ was back on, remember all those articles where JJ was talking about disagreements he was having with them?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I 100% agree as far as the overall narrative goes and the things they want to push. Yeah, I agree. But I don't think that, I don't think she intentionally wanted to make episode 8 a shit fest. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they wanted to break the Star Wars universe in that way. Yeah, I do think definitely they wanted to push their agendas, and she's a big part of that.
Yeah, and it's like, I felt like they just they go, Ryan, you know, you're an accomplished director. You know what? Just do you, buddy, and we'll rubber stamp it. I felt like no one oversaw it, or maybe someone did oversee it, and they thought it would play better than it actually wound up playing. Yeah. So,
yeah,
you know, and the fact that Kathleen Kennedy is like a ghost now, and you can't find her anywhere. You remember how she used to be front and center all the time? Right? And now she's like hardly anywhere. You hardly see her making her rounds, right? Because she's, you know, got this going on or whatever. But basically, let's be real, she's become like a leper. No one wants that infecting their panels because they know the reaction they'll get from fans. And, you know, Kevin, I like to say, did something smart. He fooled Marvel fans because he slowly started putting in the nonsense that we see strongly more now, right? It was little tidbits here and there, but as a Marvel fan, you were still getting what you want. So he knew how to weave that into a story, right? But what did he do first? He built the world. He made us invested in it, and then he threw in stuff here and there to see how it would play, and then just kept on going with it. She just came out and was like, the Force is female. This is the direction we're going. You don't like it? Hop off. And that's what people did.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, it's the frog, you know, in a pot of boiling water scenario. You know, they did really, you know, they built the whole MCU. It's an incredible accomplishment. I've talked about this a couple times. The way that Marvel Studios was able to build this thing up to what it is amazing. Without their, you know, arguably three best characters / you know, teams, with Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four unavailable, right? They take all these kind of B-tier superheroes and they're able to create this incredible universe that so many people were so invested in. It really is amazing what they did. And then once they built it off all the hard work of these characters, now that it's an engine, right, and is going to keep rolling no matter what. Now they're putting in all the stuff that they want, as far as what they want you to think and what they want you to experience, and all the Disney Plus shows where they're going to be talking about, you know, all the racism that Falcon has to deal with now that he's Captain America, and crap like that. So you're just like what you said. If you come in like KK did and just knock the door in saying, this is what we're doing, the Force is female, bitches, people are gonna back off the train pretty quick, and that's what we saw happen.
Where you have Kevin who came in and goes, yeah, I'm a comic book fan, and then you watch a movie and you see what he wrote and you go, yeah, this guy is a comic book fan. You know, it might not have been a true adaptation, but I see what he's doing. They grounded it right. You know, okay, I see where you're going. I like what you're doing with this. Oh yeah, you know, this is pretty cool. I mean, come on, Civil War. That's my that's like up there. And like just seeing that battle and the brutal knife fight between Cap and Winter Soldier or Bucky at the time. I mean, that was all compelling stuff. I mean, there's lots of different moments you can pick from the overarching franchise, and so he was smart about it. And then, you know, you got KK, and it's like, okay, they give us Rogue One, and I don't care what anyone says, man. Rogue One was awesome as a self-contained Star Wars stories. And I was like, all right, if this is what Disney's plan is, you know, I see what they're going for. I go, you know, there's a nod to new, there's a nod to old, you know, and it's its own story. I'm like, cool, I'm on board with that. Force Awakens comes out, I was like, all right. You know, I was like, you know,
everybody was hyped.
You know, it's interesting. I want to see where you take me. You know, you see Luke Skywalker at the end. I challenge anyone to tell me that they weren't excited when they saw Luke. Because you're a liar. If you were excited when you saw Luke standing there and you're like, oh, we're going to get an answer. He's looking down at Rey, you know, and he's this weathered Jedi. He's going to be like the next Yoda. And, you know, we're going to find out about Rey. What does it mean? You know, how is she connected? How was she able to do this stuff? You know, there's got to be some kind of connection in the lineage. You know what I mean? It was just so much promise. And then, bam, you get TLJ and you're like, okay, so Rey's nothing.
I rolled my eyes at the end of The Force Awakens. That's what I did. I was not excited.
See, and you know, that was interesting though, because even with The Force Awakens, you didn't have such division as you do with TLJ, because it was still up for debate with different things, right? Because there was still optimism and promise of what could be. Well, now that we have Last Jedi and we saw where they were taking it, it's like, why am I looking forward to The Rise of Skywalker? You know, you basically told me everything you've set up for means nothing. This is what it said. That whole movie to me should have been titled The Force Means Nothing. Star Wars means nothing. That should have been the name of the movie.
Hyperspace means nothing.
The laws of physics.
Getting blasted out into space means nothing. Like,
no one's ever really
so
dead,
things.
or no one ever really dies, or whatever the stupid saying is. God, I hate it so much. Or no one is ever really gone. Whatever, however they word it there. It's like, it's like a giant nothing matters thing. So as a fan, how can you tell people, hey, you should care, when you told me in the movie, none of it matters? That's basically what you said. Nothing matters. And it's the same thing with your EU side, right? You spent time and energy. You spent years collecting probably Rogue Squadron and, the stuff about the clones and, Dark Empire, Shadows of the Empire, all of those. And like, you build your collection, right? And then they come through and they tell you, oh yeah, all that stuff, you spent your time, your money, your energy in it. It doesn't mean nothing. It's we're done with it. It's not part of the canon.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that is how you feel, right? So I do agree with you. Like, Force Awakens came out, everyone was so hyped, right? It's hard not to be, because if you're someone who the last movie you saw was Revenge of the Sith, right, and you didn't watch the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, I would say, like, most normal fans probably, you hadn't had Star Wars in a long time. Everybody was really hyped and excited, and I understand all the people that were caught up in that and the potential. And yeah, it was mostly grumps like me who were pissed off about what they did to my stuff that didn't like Force Awakens and were very critical of it and like picking everything apart just to be critical of it. And that's what I was doing. Now it turns out that, yeah, like you said, Last Jedi comes out and a lot of the things that we complained about came true, because they didn't have a connection. But yeah, man, it's kind of sad. Not just kind of, it's really sad.
It is really sad. And, hopefully, I guess, what I would hope for episode 9 at this point, or Rise of Skywalker, is I just want a good movie, man. I mean, and it echoes to not just Star Wars franchise, not to just where MCU is going, but the culture war in general. I just want good stuff. I feel like it seems like so much to ask these days, but I just want a good film. I just want to be able to sit down and watch something. I don't care about your politics. I don't care about your views. I don't care about Respect the Whammon. I don't care about any of that. I just want a good movie. I want, for you probably want a good movie and a good book.
Yeah.
So it's a sad state of affairs. So, kind of to bring everything to a close, what would you like to see from the EU? What would you like to see from the movies? And if there's any way, how could they save it for you?
So I kind of said it earlier. I don't think that the best thing that I can expect is for this movie to give me some hope in the direction that Lucasfilm is going to. That they've listened to the fans instead of insulting them and are kind of changing things and doing what they can to help repair some of that damage, both with what they put on screen and the way that they behave towards everyone in the aftermath. I personally, there's nothing that this movie could do to kind of change my mind about the sequel trilogy as a whole, like the content of it. But what I want to see from Star Wars, is I want to see Legends continued under an alternate timeline, which they have Legends. And I would love to see more books produced for that. I think the best way to go about that is, a couple months ago, we actually had the first thing with a Legends banner on it in years. It was a comic book, Marvel 108, which continued the 107 Star Wars issues of the Marvel series before, like from back in the 80s and stuff.
Interesting.
So that came out. Yeah, that actually came out. It sold really well, even in comparison to a lot of the other Star Wars stuff that was out. The only thing that really beat it was Galaxy's Edge #1, which the next week for the #2, or not next week, but 2 weeks later for the #2 issue, it sold practically nothing. So it was just because it's a #1. And I think that there's a lot of movement and people that want to get into the expanded universe that could help us push along the way. And we could get a company like Del Rey to come and say, Lucasfilm, hey, we would love to have our own story group and develop stuff under the Legends timeline. And if there's money to be had, if there's people willing to buy it, after we get done with the sequel trilogy and they're not as worried about competition and things, I do think that there's a really good potential for it. That's my hope going forward.
Which is why it's so interesting to have someone from the EU side of things, because like I said at the very beginning of this, I think that fandoms in general, we have to be united in saying no, to put it bluntly, to the bullshit. We have to come together and say we don't want your ideals, your political pandering, your garbage, your equality and all this bullshit that you think we need in film, books, and other media, right? We need to come together and be like, we're not here for that. We just want a good story. We want the good old days where you can go to the movies and you can just escape what's going on in the real world and be in tune with the movie. You read a book, you can escape into the book, right? Fandoms are about safe escapism. And I think that that's what these idiots don't get, or why we're all so angry. It's because you're taking things we use as an escape, and you're using it and twisting it to your own insidious means, right? You're to push your own narratives. And these are things that we helped build, okay? Star Wars was built, whether it's EU or whether it's the films, they were built by the fans, okay? The company put them out, but a visionary, gave us something and said, hey, this is my vision, this is my story, and we loved it, and we liked it, and we liked it the way it was, right? And then we chose to embrace it, and then people expanded on that, right? Through games, through stories. And why did they happen? Because there was such a long gap between Star Wars and the trilogy and the prequels. So to fill in that gap came the books, came the video games, came the comics, right? Those were things that were to supplement while we waited, and people loved that. And I think both sides, we have common ground in the fact that this company is intent on screwing up both ends of it, right? They screwed us both over. You guys, they tackled first because they were like, oh, not very many people read books, so bam, there you go, right? And then on the film end, they just hit us all at once, right? So we need to come together as the fandoms we are, and we need to stand up with one voice and say, enough of the bullshit. We're tired. You're tired of this garbage that you put out. We're tired of you saying that we should accept it. And we're tired of you saying that just because I don't accept the garbage writing that you put into your movies and your shows, that I'm a racist, I'm a sexist, I'm a bigot, I'm this person living in my parents' basement on my computer just trolling.
Yeah, I completely agree about being united. I do think that sometimes, we're so active and in this stuff every day that there's not always stuff on the other side to fight against, so then sometimes it kind of creeps inwards and you start thinking about, well, this person maybe isn't exactly aligned with me on this thing, but we don't need to be, right? We have such bigger things to worry about. And a phrase I've heard, it also happens to be a new Ryan Johnson movie, but before that, a phrase I've heard is knives out, right? That's what we want to be like. We want to be encircling each other with our backs to each other with knives out against everyone else, not pointed inwards. And there's a lot of crossover between fandoms. There's a lot of different people, the way people feel about stuff, whether you consider yourself fandom menace or whatever. No one is going to agree on everything, but the big important things, we need to stick together on.
Yes, and that's why it's so great to have you here, because I come from the film perspective, you come from the book perspective, and we both have laid out this argument here today where we both have been screwed over in our respective fandoms in different ways, but it's still the same. It's still the same dagger that went into both fandoms' backs. And you know what? Disney films, because it's not Lucas films anymore. They are not going to understand anything. And I did a whole rant on Disney last night. The only way people are going to make a difference and we're going to stop seeing this crap being made is if people speak with their wallets. Nothing will change unless you don't buy what they put out. And there's going to be temptation there, because as a fan, you want to be in the know about stuff, but do you really want to endorse something that's an inferior product? Because basically they're giving us crap and we're consuming it and saying that it's okay. And the funny part is the basics of economics or of consumerism is that if you don't like the product, you don't buy it. And then after you don't buy it for a while, they stop making it. And I think we need to speak more with the only thing that Disney and all of these other companies are going to understand, and that's the almighty dollar bill. Because once they start getting hit there, they're going to reevaluate. I mean, when they got hit with Solo, they've been scrambling, right? Now they're like, oh, Mandalorian's coming. Oh, they released the comic we were talking about. Yeah, they were like, oh, no, look, we're still Star Wars, right? But they don't know what to do, because you hit them in the bottom line. You hit them where it hurts. The cash. That's the only thing they're going to understand. They're a corporation. I'll tell you something. Newsflash for all these weird SJW wackos. You think they care about your cause? Do you think they care about your weird views that you have about social justice nonsense? They don't care. They don't care. They see you guys as a walking ATM. Okay? And here's the funny part, Disney. These people don't care either. They're bitching when you don't put it in the movie, but I don't see these people going to see your films. Who's going to see them? The fans. That's who's going to see them. The fans.
It's an interesting thing, the money aspect, because that is ultimately what they care about. I was talking the other day, I forget whose stream it was on, but we were talking about Lion King. And how Lion King, this CGI remake of something we all saw 20 years ago that wasn't even that well done, made $1.7 billion worldwide, right? So eventually there has to be a turning point where we start demanding more from entertainment. And like you said, you have to speak with your wallets.
Exactly.
And we'll see what happens. I've made my prediction that I do think episode 9 is going to make over $1 billion. I think there's too much riding on it. Too many people that, whether even if they think it's going to be a trash fire or not, are still going to want to see it burn. So I would be thrilled if it made less than that and see them try to explain it away. But I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. If you don't like what a company's doing, stop spending your money on it. That is the only language that the people at the top really understand, because they'll push their ideology to a point until it becomes not profitable for all the shareholders.
Exactly, because this is what people fail to see with any company in the history of companies being companies. Maybe there is that one or two people within the company that legitimately care, but business and corporations as a whole, right? They run on a bottom line, okay? And what Disney started out and what it was is not what it is today. And they're doing this shift because they think the bottom line is all of this crap that's been going on, which starts back in Hollywood. They think that's what the selling point is. And until people start saying, I'm getting tired of this. I'm getting tired of the Lion King 300. I'm getting tired of the copy paste Aladdin or whatever else they're going to come out with. And they start saying, I'm not going to go and see this. I'm not going to take my kids to go and see this. But, here's the thing. We've given Disney too much power. I mean, look at the film slate, right? how do you have a company that releases literally like 3 or 4 movies together? And who are they competing with? Themselves. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's getting insane what they're buying up. And they're the only ones that are succeeding somehow. They're the only ones that are cracking $1 billion. It's strange.
Yeah, it's the normal moviegoer, and it's the Disney brand that it gets stamped with, and everyone see it and they go, "Oh, that's my childhood. Oh, The Lion King, yay, Disney!" You know, and people have got to stop doing that. And then I see the sad faces, and it's like, well, why did you pay? You seen The Lion King? Go get the Diamond Edition on Blu-ray. That's
Yeah.
the good version.
It's in the vault. You can't get it. It's in the vault.
Go, I'm sure they own it. Go throw in your copy of Aladdin. Go throw in your copy of Lion King. I know you got it. That was the good one. You didn't need a reboot of a soulless, corpse-written, lifeless shell of what the original was, because they had to have real lions, and you know what? I might say that I go and see a movie, but just know I'm not endorsing them with my wallet. The only thing I'm giving Disney, unfortunately, is my time, which is a commodity within itself. But I endorse my time, but I get to see this for free. Okay? If you work in the theater, you get to see this for free. So I'm not contributing to their box office. I'm just viewing it and telling you my opinion. But you people paying money, stop paying $20 to see it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We've kind of beat it to death, but if the only way that these guys will understand is if we stop using our money, and we're not just these sheep that consume stuff, right? Just because it's there to consume, that we start demanding more from them.
Exactly. Demand more from your books. Demand more from your entertainment. So. This has been, a wonderful discussion. I try to keep these things it depends where the conversation goes, but within the hour and a half mark, I have a beautiful unicorn waiting for me. It is her birthday. If you want to say happy birthday to her. So,
oh, nice. Happy birthday.
So, that's probably embarrassing, but yes. I'm going to definitely go and hang out. But I wanted to definitely, get your feelings on the EU and to have a uniting of fronts. I think more people from film and more people from books should stand together and say enough is enough. Enough is enough. Don't buy it if you don't like it. Don't give these people your money. We've got to start, even if we're fans, even if it's going to hurt, you got to stop endorsing it. Otherwise, they're going to just keep on doing it, folks. They're just going to keep on taking your money and going, thank you very much. I'm going to continue making this crap. And hello there, Stig. Anyways, you have any final thoughts for the wonderful folks out there?
Hey, I really appreciate you having me on and reaching out and, making this work. And I agree with, basically everything you said. We have to demand more. We have to speak with our wallets at some point and stop accepting what we're getting out of entertainment culture. Stieg said Ryan peed on my cat the other day. I don't know. I don't think that is true. I dispute those claims. However, if I was drunk, who knows? But thanks for having me on. Like I said, you guys come check out my channel. I mostly talk about Star Wars Expanded Universe, some Star Wars relevant news, and dabble in DC Comics every once in a while. So it's been great it's been great being on your stream. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Hey, no problem. And I made you a mod, so you can go ahead and drop your link in there if you want to your channel. And that way people who are in the fandom zone can, go check out your stuff. Definitely check out an awesome stream that Ryan did where Jeremy talked to the haters, so to speak.
Dude, that stream, that stream got me monetized, basically.
Oh man, that stream was wild.
I think it has actually, let me check. It has almost 11,000 views and like just a ridiculous amount of watch hours. And I was shocked with what happened and all the people that showed up. It was incredible. So yeah, but definitely come to my channel. I'm still kind of getting into the groove. Oh, Mary Mayhem says, Ryan, you rock my world. Thank you, Mary. You're so awesome. I appreciate you. She said it twice. So nice. She said it twice. But yeah, thanks for everyone who's here. I've seen almost everybody here in my channel too at one point or another. Thank you guys for your support. And I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. And I appreciate having you over in it. Who knows? Maybe I could get you on and we'll just do a dive into DC, because that's kind of my realm. Some people might even say I may shill for them a little bit.
His worst thing is to be a shill for, man.
Oh yeah, I mean DC Universe, $7.49 for a month, and you can get them for a year, like General Zod does. Put in the code Zod, and you'll get a discount.
Really?
No, I wish.
Okay, I was gonna say, what the hell?
I figure if I renewal it enough, they'll just endorse my.
My renewal is about up. I was like, really?
No, Ryan, I'm working on it. DC, if you hear me, I will promote you. Just tap Zod. I'm ready.
That's funny.
But yes, definitely go check out RK Outpost. Go check out Ryan's channel. It's good to see you doing great things, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to sit here and chat with me for a bit, and go over everything that we talked about. And I would definitely love to have you back on the channel again.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Awesome. So everybody, thank you very much. To let you know, don't forget tomorrow, as far as I go, we have Watch More Anime featuring Fatal J and Perp Minded, where we talk about a landmark anime, Bleach, which is going to be just phenomenal. I can't wait. And I also have a couple of reviews dropping pretty soon when Joker releases. About a couple of days after, I'll drop my spoiler review where I'll dive into the Joker and actually be able to tell you guys spoilers, because it's still on an embargo. So my spoiler review will be coming. I'm going to be dropping 3 from Hell and The Devil's Rejects review, which will be coming out. And I'll be talking, maybe I'll do a video about my feelings on Rob Zombie and why I love him as a director. And, just a couple of other different things coming up here in the Fandom Zone. And as always, don't forget, Monday through Thursday, technically, Friday into Saturday morning, we do Fandom Talks. You guys know it. Late night shenanigans with me and the Bridge crew, PB, Mad Squirrel, LB, Perp Minded, and all of the others, Proper Jeremy, and whoever else pops by. So check out that and get in the funny antics and crazy stuff that we talk about on there. And you know what? As always, remember the one and only rule here in the Fandom Zone: kneel before Zod. Goodbye, y'all.